welcome to IT Nation Wise Up, the podcast that skips the sales pitch and brings you real valuable insights for your business. Here with Vicky as always, and today we have a very special guest, Desraie Thomas. Desraie, why don't you do your own bio and tell the audience or anyone who might not know you, I know you're pretty well known in the space already, but in case anyone doesn't know who you are, give a little background and we can get going.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I always love the topic conversation, which we'll get into in a second. Anyone who doesn't know me, it's nice to meet you. Welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn at any point in time or wherever your social media, Desraie Thomas. To introduce myself, I've been in the channel for about 10 years. I've had the amazing opportunity to work for some great companies within the industry, including Passportal, Datto, and now I'm currently at Compliance Scorecard, where we do compliance management with Tim Golden. Absolutely fantastic company. I really like it. If you guys are looking for anything, compliance conversations, this isn't a business conversation. Come check me out. And then really in life, if you want to know anything about sourdough, dogs, camping, any crafting whatsoever, reach out. I have information that can help you out with any project you're ever thinking about.
I can validate that is a true story because I see Des's posts on Facebook and she makes the most amazing sourdough bread. I've never tried it.
Me either. That sounds fun.
Yeah, here for all the tips. There's like a whole culture around it, right? Like because you find the yeasts that are like aged, nice. Like literally like that.
There's the mother dough. The mother dough. It's always important.
The mother dough.
If no one's ever watched the Brooklyn Nine-Nine episode where they talk about the mother dough, it's highly recommended. It's hilarious. But yeah, my mother dough, my sourdough starter, I started over 10 years ago. It was like it's almost as long as my relationship, which is also the longest relationship I've ever had. So I have two relationships that lasted my life or long, which is sourdough and my partner, which is amazing. But I've been making bread for a very long time, but only really got into it like more in the last few years. And I have to tell you, like, I learned so much, and there's like entire I had a CannaCon event in Kelowna, absolutely fantastic event that I went to, and we were out there, and it was rainy, and we were staying for a few extra days. I'm like, well, what am I going to do with my time? So I posted on the Canadian Facebook sourdough group. Does anyone have a starter to give me? And this lady gave me her starter. I showed up at her house. She gave me this little jar, and it's like it was made from grapes. And I'm like, this is amazing. There's a great industry around it. There's great community. I love community. So being a part of the sourdough community, I have several people I coach through helping with the sourdough. It's very weird.
It's a whole subculture. Yeah, I gotta keep going with it. I'm sorry.
It's a subculture.
Matt, have you ever heard of this before? Doesn't this blow your mind that what Des has is like years old?
Yeah, and then they have like
100-year-old cultures that you can snag, right? Anyways, it's crazy. But besides that, so Des, the show is all about bringing IT community experts into the space that have backgrounds from sales and marketing and operations and all over the place, cybersecurity. But we brought you on because you have such a compelling story that we haven't been able to really talk about yet. And I had the opportunity to see you speak as one of the panelists at CompTIA ChannelCon back in August. And you were on a specific panel, and the theme was, it was about being laid off and the emotions that go through people that experience that at some time in their lives. And then also the story of how you've been able to kind of evolve and grow was really compelling. I think for the audience, I know for me personally, it spoke to me and some of the experiences I've had in my life. Matt, we were just talking before the show. You've had similar experiences as well. And we thought, hey, this is great.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about this. Let's dig in.
Oh,
absolutely.
I love it.
It's a topic we don't talk about.
I absolutely love the conversation. I was really lucky. You guys, Vicky, I know Matt, you don't know me all that well, but Vicky also following me on LinkedIn and Facebook. I tend to be pretty upfront and honest about things. I don't like to just live in the cookie cutter world where everything's perfect. And I don't think it's good for other people as well. And so when bad things happen, I'm like, oh, by the way, P.S. a bad thing happened. Like, what are we going to do? And so I found it really, I didn't even realize how powerful it was until Adam from CompTIA, it's the second year in a row, he's reached out to me and said, your post that you did, and it would have been a post that I made months prior. He's like, it made an influence, an impact. And I think it's important that we try to share your story. So would you mind coming and talking about this? And I was like, oh yeah, cool, excellent. My horrible sad story is helping people. Yay. But yes. So it's fantastic. I'm glad you guys are having this conversation. I think it is a very powerful conversation. And I don't know if you guys just want me to talk or like,
Yeah.
but yeah. Cool.
Take us through it.
So one time I had a job and then I didn't. End of story. So thanks for bringing me on. It was a great chat. Okay, I joke, totally. So over a span of just over a year and a half, I was laid off, or I was technically laid off once. And then the second time they did massive company layoffs, and I knew I was very close to being on the chopping block. So I decided to quit in order to go to CompTIA or go to ChannelCon and use that as luckily a job opportunity, which I was lucky I did end up getting a job at that event, which was exciting. But my very first layoff is I started the company. I used to work at Datto, and working at Datto, I absolutely loved, and I had no intention of leaving. I was super excited. I loved the team. I loved the way they were going. It was very exciting. But cyber insurance seemed like such an interesting conversation. In every room that we walked in, everyone was talking about cyber insurance. So when I got approached to work for the company, it seemed like a really good idea. And you check with your coaches, you check with like the people that mentor you, and you check with the business, you ask the right questions, and everything's going to be good. And then less than 6 months later, I like this part of the story. Less than 6 months later, I was headed out for my normal 1 week, 10-day vacation that comes from over Canada Day and over Independence Day, because no one ever does any work that day. And I was headed out the door. My boss calls me, and I'm like, he doesn't call me. Why is he calling me? Like boss man's not calling me. And then he let me off. And I'd never really been laid off like that before. And I'm headed up to the door on vacation to no cell service for 10 days. And what is happening with my life? And so I was lucky that I got to take 10 days to kind of like process and figure things out. But the steps in that, at first I thought it was going to be very much, okay, I'm laid off. I'm going to find a job. Okay, wait, it's summertime. When was the last time you had a summer off? Summer off 2023. It's going to be amazing. We're going to have time off. We're going to spend the summer doing things. I have so many people that are telling me that they would hire me. I'm going to find the right job. There's going to be options. People are just going to come up to me and be like, Des, we want you to work with us. And I'm going to figure it out. And then there's the other part of that is I was going through a layoff. You're like emotional, like about it. And I'm like, well, what do I want to do next? I was being coached that maybe I should go into a higher role, like I should be in management, or I should be a channel chief or something along those lines. But do I want to do that? Well, what if I don't want to do that? And so I was like having these arguments in my head, and with the mentors and the people around me being like, well, you should do this and you should do this. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to. I was happy working where I was. I don't know what I want to do. So I decided to take a minute and take a breather and my goal was to take the summer off and like just kind of chill, but also try to stay as relevant in the community as I could at the same time. As I started this, I'm a huge project person. Give me something to do. So I posted on LinkedIn again, and I said to anybody, I'm like, does anyone have any project work? Does anyone have any fractional work? Does anyone have anything that they want a Des on board that I can help and be beneficial? And Kathleen Martin reached out, and she's like, Des, I got a podcast. Like you guys are doing right now. I got a podcast. Do you want to do a podcast with me? And I'm like, sure. Challenge accepted. So we started the CRO podcast, and we recorded like 60 episodes in 4 months.
Wow.
Like it was.
You were really churning and burning.
We're like 4 episodes a day some days. Like it was insane. But it was amazing because we were interviewing chief revenue officers. We're interviewing the people who I want to hire me. Like the people who have. And I was learning so much. It was such great conversations. I started being really invested in my community. I've always been really big at organizing things, like fundraising events and like things. So trying to like build friendships and relationships and doing all these things. And then I thought September would hit. I lost one job that I had contract in hand. I feel like this is a lesson anyone should learn. I had contract in hand on a day, and I asked for an extra week just as a breather because I had all this information coming at me. And they were like, you should take this job and you should do this job. And even though I had this perfect job in contract in hand, I thought about it. And on Friday, I messaged the CEO and said, I'm going to take this job. And on Monday, I got a message from my new boss who said, we're taking back the position. The headcount's going somewhere else. So I'm like, wait, maybe getting a job isn't going to be easy. Maybe it's not as easy as I thought. But then that's the next day, I had another conversation with someone else who was like, no, Des, we want to hire you. I'm just waiting for headcount. We're getting headcount in October, 100%. There's no way it can't happen. We are all good. Well, it's September now. I kind of had some rough September. It was not necessarily. So I'm like, I can wait till October. No big deal. No, wait. January, 100% January, we're getting headcount. I meant February. And so now all of a sudden I got laid off in June and now it's February and the jobs aren't there.
Yeah.
Watching people get laid off.
Well, and it sounds like the expectations, like there's a lot of operational considerations when it comes to putting in headcount and creating budgets and stuff like that at the end of the year. And a lot of negotiations that sometimes go right into the following year. And that's when you finally realize, okay, this is potentially legit or not. So it sounds like you were probably on an emotional roller coaster ride.
There was one job I had one interview process I went through, 7 interviews. 7 interviews to tell me at the end they went a different direction. And I don't even think I would love to ask, I didn't, but I don't even think they went in a different direction and hired someone else, because when I was going through the interview process, they were opening the role for me. Once again, the headcount issue, the headcount conversations, they weren't hired. When I started the interview process, they actually had me for a different role. And then the higher ups got involved. I'm like, no, we want Des over here. Let's do 5 more interviews and then change our minds and take them all away. So there is so much, I learned so much about. It was really, really emotionally hard for a long time because I had so many people around me that would support me and say they believed in me and they wanted to work with me. And still to this day, I have people who reach out to me and be like, oh, I didn't know you were laid off. I would have given you work and things like that. But when it comes to the actual dollars and cents and the people who are going to pay your bills and not being worried that my bills are not going to be paid, it's not that easy. There's so much more to it. And it was freaking petrifying. If it wasn't for the fractional work that I was so lucky to get, and I worked so hard for, and we worked so well together. Portio Technologies, I love the company. They're a great company. They do AI. It's fantastic. Anyways, I did a lot of fractional work for them, but it wasn't for them. Nickel and diming for fractional work is very difficult.
Wow.
Can you can you take us through, in case anyone has never gone through this themselves, what's the mindset, what's the mental state you're in when you first learn that you're laid off or your position's been eliminated, or insert whatever sugar coating you want to put on top of it? What do you feel like? What goes through your head right at that moment when you get that phone call? I have to have a meeting with you, and you have a pretty good idea, you know what's about to come down.
Forced change. Forced change. You have moments in your life, if you think about it, at least the way I think about it, in your life as an adult, you probably maybe get married, don't get married, you have kids or don't have kids, get pets, don't have pets, and then probably maybe move or don't move. Those are all points of life where your life can completely change, left, right, your day-to-day will actually drastically shift when anything's happened. Changing jobs is another one. So getting forced to change jobs means forced change. Forced change, my very first response was I don't wanna. I wanted a job where I could work and be valuable to another company. To be fair, it wasn't I did see it coming, and getting laid off wasn't the end of the world. There's a whole nother bucket of worms in there. But just to talk about the actual being laid off, now all of a sudden I'm okay, I should also say that my partner, Trevor, a lot of people in the industry know him as well. He also works in the industry. He also got laid off in my layoffs as well. I was lucky I got laid off first. Lucky. Because then I looked at him and I'm like, can you afford the bills? Because now I'm like, okay, first, I was doing a good job. I was doing the job that I was hired for. And I'm good at it. I know I'm good at it. The numbers, the growth percentage that we were all good numbers, but I wasn't good enough. And it had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with what I could do with my job. It didn't have, I had no control over it. So I got mad, and especially over the year and two, the second time that happened, I got mad, but not just at the companies who lay us off and the companies that we work for. I got mad at myself because somewhere along in my adulthood, it got stuck in my head that I'm reliant on a company to make money. So not only a company that I need to do a good job for, I need to hit my targets and excel and have good management, all of those things. So I can do everything I can do, but they can just tell me that their targets changed and now I'm not valuable to their company like that. So when in my adulthood did I decide to start making money for myself? So one of the biggest things that happened is I got angry at myself for putting myself in the position where I didn't have any control over what my next steps were. And that's a shift that I made walking away from, is I started focusing on what value do I have that can make me money if I need it to. So whether that be being fractional and talking about sales and talking about marketing and talking about business, how do I put that together and make me make money? But then the next day I would be like, yay, week off, yay, or month off, yeah, I'm gonna get a job right away. I think the hardest absolute part about getting laid off was not only the shock of it, but the knowing that your value to somebody else has nothing to do with you, and that can happen whenever they feel like it.
One of the things that you just said that really stuck out to me was the fact that you had never really considered in your adult life that you're assuming that the money's going to be there because you have this job. And so it sounds like you were able to kind of identify like what your sweet spot was in terms of what you're really good at, right? And then figuring out how to monetize that. Are there any other tools or kind of things to think about maybe for the audience, for, again, anybody that has been laid off or not? Sounds like preparation is probably key. It's almost like an insurance policy, right? What are some tips or other things that you would think about if people are trying to maybe prepare themselves better for potentially the worst? Hopefully it won't happen, but yeah.
First of all, we should all be trying to learn as much as we can from the jobs that we have while we have them. And I don't mean just like doing your 9-to-5 job. I mean, what tools do you have around you that a job can give you that will give you extra outside of it? Number one. Two, networking, I think, is everything. I think that we should be taught how to network in freaking high school. Like, we did it in high school. They should just tell us to do it in adulthood and like figure it out. But the conversations I had about job and moving forward were all based on my network and people communicating around me. And it's such a hard industry and hard world we're in right now. Like 5-6 years ago, jobs were just kind of being thrown at people. And now it takes several interviews to find a job. So that would be like networking, learning from your current job, and then also looking at your own skill set and figuring out what are you good at? What are you good at that someone else would pay for? And what are you good at that someone else would pay for that you like to do? Those all be different things. And I think it's really important to, even with networking and this, to talk about everybody's different. I'm clearly a pretty big extrovert. You're not going to see me on Reddit unless I have to, honestly, probably ever, because it's not the way I communicate with the world. But everyone is different. So if it's networking, what kind of networking do you like? Do you communicate on Facebook, LinkedIn, insert? Are you a gamer and you're connecting that way? Who are the people that you want to connect with? What's the job that you want next? And how do you make a relationship with the person who has that job and the people, the community around them? In the format, whether it be going to an in-person event or like this, hop on as many webinars or whatever you can as possible to build those relationships. And then for the skill set, like you have, say, a programmer and a developer, that skill set is something that you can sell. Like you can use those hours to cover your own butt, but you have to put the work in, and it's not easy. But even as much as you, like I talk about now at 42 years old, what I've learned is now to prepare myself for retirement. So what hobbies can I do that are going to help pay for my like help keep me busy, but also make me money? Sewing, I'm going to try, I don't know if I'm going to do it. Baking, that's another thing. Or sales coaching, or there's so many different things that I'm good at. But whatever, like whoever's listening, whatever value you're going to get from this, look at your own skill set. What do you like to do? And then how can you develop those to be better? So that way people will look at you as someone to lean on later in life, and someone that they'll actually look at your, like, oh, you put 10,000 hours into sourdough bread. Yeah, I'll pay you $15 a loaf. I'm in. Perfect. Because you put that time in, but you got to put that time in the front end. And I think that is what my focus will be since being laid off moving forward, is to lean on the company to learn as much as I can, that I'm safe next, that I'm valuable next, but also on my own skill set. So that way, if I need to find ways to make money, I can find ways to make money.
So let's talk about the next step in your journey. Going back to the story, you went to ChannelCon, you did a bunch of interviews, you snagged a job. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And where are you working now?
I work at Compliance Scorecard with Tim Golden. Tim and I actually do go way back. Trevor's worked with him before. He's fantastic. I really liked his working for a good CEO and good management was by far the biggest thing that I had coming back after two companies that weren't my favorite. I knew that I didn't want a micromanager. I didn't want a manager who didn't believe me or didn't believe in the channel. There was management that I had where we would talk about the go-to market of the channel and how MSPs work, and they would be like, no, we're just going to change that. And I'm like, well, he don't really work that way. And that's Tim. That's Tim and Maureen. They're amazing people. They have hearts of gold. And then the biggest, so that was for me personally important, but also I don't think there's that many people on Reddit who have such a good name as Tim does. No one, when it comes to compliance,
yeah.
Yeah, people usually are upset on Reddit. When it comes to Compliance Scorecard and Tim on Reddit, he has done such a good job investing in the MSP channel that people really, really believe in who he is and what he's doing. And I wanted to be a part of that. And I was really excited that he was willing to bring me on.
So you talked about what starts to go through your mind when you've been laid off and when you realize that your tenure in an organization ends. And for someone who went through that, or someone who has that happen to them, and they start asking themselves, what's next? What do you do? What's your advice to them? Like, take a few minutes or a few days and process this. And how do you start going about trying to find your next thing? Is it your network? Do you start looking at what's in the channel? Like, how do you recover?
So network, my entire, I would say, adult career, I decided to become a grown-up about the age of 29, give or take. And that's when I started my adult career. I spent most of my 20s backpacking and traveling, as most parents don't want you to do, but I do what I do. And so when I started my adult career, and every job moving forward, it was entirely based on my network. And I very quickly realized, getting laid off, that actually there was one job that didn't, but I quickly realized that I can't get an interview with my resume. I don't know if it's because of the economy. Even in Calgary, the economy for jobs is really bad. The economy across the U.S., the economy in our industry, especially since I'm kind of specialized where I am at. So people don't look at me. So one thing I would always recommend, if you are looking for a job outside your industry or anywhere, get your resume professionally done. people used to say ChatGPT was the way to do it, but I don't think it is, because there's so much, like, people who do professional resumes, they understand how to write it so it doesn't make it look like it's written by ChatGPT, and it's not just using trigger words. So I think that anyone who's doing like applying for jobs by the resume should get their resume professionally done. I think that's a big trigger. Networking and reaching out to, making sure every single person you knows that you're looking for a job, and asking those people to say your names in other rooms. It is, but also you should also be doing this. Like Matt, Vicky, me, I know I do this, and Vicky, I'm pretty sure I've heard you say many people's names in other rooms. Matt, we don't know each other. We should all be saying everyone's names we ever think about in a room that might be valuable to somebody else. And I think
you never know about the effect that it's going to have. Yep.
Yeah. I had the last event I was at, I had a MSP come up to me and say, Des, do you know anyone looking for this specific role? And I'm like, I don't know anyone right now, but I'll keep. And then within 2 hours, I had someone come up to me and say, hey, I have someone looking for this specific role. And I was like, yeah, actually, I literally just had this conversation. Let me just piece these together. It's not the first time that's happened. There's been many times that I'm not saying that it wasn't me, but speaking someone's name has put them in an interview process where they got the job, and they would never have done that because they never would have known in the first place. It just wouldn't happen. So I think that's very, very important. And then that's the first thing that I made sure to offer my services, like anything that I could be valuable to anyone for anything, and then hopefully someone would pay for it eventually. But if not, then at least I was learning something and I was staying relevant in the industry. Now, I understand that doesn't work for everyone. Like I said, I'm pretty kind of siloed. I'm more of a public person. I'm sales, so it's a bit different. If you're looking for a networking, if you're actually working in networking or working as a programmer or something along those lines, that probably conversation. But your people who are hiring and looking, they're still somewhere else. If you're a programmer and you're in a event with a buddy online doing something, the chances are, if you're a good programmer and a buddy knows you're a good programmer and you talk to them, they're also going to want you to work for them or work with them because they like you, and people like to work with people they want to like. So whatever that kind of works, your mentors, mentees, coaches, those relationships to me, it wasn't just like one person I've worked for. I literally reached out to anyone and said, I need you to know that I'm looking for work. If you have anything, please think of me. And there were some roles that I got interviewed for, which would have been amazing. I didn't, at the time when I first got laid off and I was being more picky, but I said no to roles, but they were roles. The only reason I was being offered them or being interviewed for them was because someone said my name in it.
Right. Somebody, you got that personal reference.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that you mentioned during your panel session, which really stuck with me, is that when you are interviewing for positions, don't just look at the title, look at the description of what you'd actually be doing.
Especially in IT.
Sales, IT. I don't know about marketing, but sales and IT, 100%. Besides losing that one role, and I still don't think it was a bad decision. That was just a lesson that was learned. But the biggest mistake that I made is I would have people that would come up to me like, Des, I want to hire you. I'm like, cool, perfect. What's the role? They're like, a BDR. I'm like, I'm not a BDR. A BDR to me. What's a BDR to you, Vicky?
It sounds like I was a BDR when I was hired at ConnectWise, and that was frontline sales, smiling and dialing and making 60 to 100 dials a day.
So cold caller.
Right? A cold caller, yeah. What was it? What did it mean?
It was the same thing with a channel development manager or a partner development manager. The role is the exact same depending on the company and depending on what it is. And and also it's customer success. Customer success, BDR, BDM, and CDM, depending on the company, are all the exact same role. But in my world, a CDM, channel development manager, is a person who's going to the events, traveling. They're not necessarily, depending on the size of the company, direct sales. Business development can be a mix of both. BDR is cold caller, and customer success is almost support, making sure that your your client is supported throughout their, if it's sell through, maybe sell through, but usually customer success, if you have a product and something happens, they don't know how to use it, they go to customer success. So why would I ever apply for a customer success role? Never. I'm not, because I don't know how to help technology people deal with technology. And so you are 100% right, Vicky. And in every industry, that is by far the biggest mistake that I made. There's a lot of opportunities that I lost because of it, because people, I would say, I don't want a BDR role. And they'd be like, okay, cool, moving forward. And then they would hire someone for the exact role that I would have taken, but the role is completely different than what I would assume as a BDR role would be. And so if that recommendation, 100%, don't apply for anything and don't look at the title. It doesn't matter.
So does it come down to like the clarifying questions? What are ways that you can get those answers when you have that opportunity, you're being interviewed by the hiring manager? What are you going through, like what the description is? What type of clarifying questions are you asking?
Definitely, I'll ask them what it means to them. Like straight up, be like, what does a BDR mean to you? Like, what does the position actually mean to you? Depending on the size of the company, it's usually like, okay, if you're if you have 30, 40 employees plus and you have BDRs, the BDR position, I'm like, what is that? Like, what does that actually mean to you? And depending on the size of the company. Sorry, I'm kind of circling in my head. Let me rephrase this again. So now and moving forward, and what I even learned with my current job where they were hiring customer success, is I actually had a sit down with Tim and said, okay, what does this actual role entail? And what are you looking for the person that you hire on their 3-6 year plan? Are you looking for a person just to do this and that's it, infinity? I'm not your person. Because the idea of sticking in this one little silo, and that's not where I'll fit. If you're looking for someone for this, and this is the growth that you see, then yes, I'm totally in for this role and let's grow together. It doesn't always work when you have like a massive company that you're interviewing with the HR person and you don't even know, then it's a little bit different. But actually having that conversation, even with the HR person, whoever, especially, so I think it starts with the problem of even applying for roles, because you won't apply for a role because you think that it's like, so then my first step would be look at the actual whole entire role. And I would recommend, especially for any female, to apply for every role, even if you think you only are 30% qualified, because there's whole statistics around females don't qualify or don't apply for roles unless they feel they're 100%. And males generally will apply for roles when they're like nothing. So we need to apply for everything. But when you're actually getting to the interview process, don't discount the interview or the role based on the title and even the description, because a lot of the times I do find for the right person and with the right company, it does change when you're scaled to size. But especially smaller ones, they want the right person in the right seat to grow with the company, and not necessarily the person who's just going to do exactly what they're told at the end. But if you get into that interview, you can have that conversation. And if you don't if you don't even get to that interview, you can never have that conversation. So that's why apply for anything, even if the description isn't right, and get into that interview. And then once you're there, you can figure it out from there. At least you have a choice. If you don't get the interview, you don't get a choice.
So I want to take a step backwards timeline wise. I've heard other technical people have this issue. You probably don't, Vicky, saying you probably don't either, but many people who are engineering technical people, how do you keep up with your network? And how do you tell them, how do you inform everyone that I've been laid off and I'm now open to work? And what I mean is the context here. A lot of us, and me formerly, have trouble maintaining these relationships. And like we kind of know people, and all of a sudden you're calling someone that you haven't spoken to in 10 years and saying, hey, I need a job. Like it feels kind of awkward. So what are your tips for maybe someone who's not as socially outgoing or not used to keeping relationships up like that? How do you approach that? How do you go in and keep these things fresh so that it's not out of the blue, I need something?
It's funny you asked that, only because I just did a post the other day on social about how I miss all the people, excuse me, I miss all the people that I've said I love you to that I don't even remember anymore. Because that's how relationships work. You just like meet someone and you might have a good hour, you might have like a single serving friends, you might have a good 6 months that you become the closest people in the entire world. And then for some reason never speak to each other again, because that's the way life is. And that's the way
Mhm.
relationships work. I think we all do it. And so that's really important to kind of recognize, is that we all do it. So if everyone's all in the same place, then it's just as awkward for all of us to do it. So the people who do it at all are already a step ahead compared to not doing it at all. When I talk when I coach or talk to anyone about networking, and it, once again, you have to do it where you're at and where you want to interact and however you want to do it. But I recommend to anyone, and I'm usually talking to people who are going to a lot of conferences. How do you build your network at conferences? Well, every conference you're around thousands of people. So you're probably going to meet another 100 people that you meet, like a like quick name. You might remember them. They might not remember you. You're probably going to have another 20, 30 people that maybe you spent an extra hour with, where like, say they were at the lobby bar for that extra hour, or you sat down with lunch with them, you sat breakfast, or where you had an additional conversation where now you might know their kids' names, or you might know something about their business, something you didn't know before. And then you probably have about 3 or 4 people who you might interact with more often, or like you have friends, but you have those people that you might interact with, but you've only never had a one-on-one sitting. I always make sure that at every event or everywhere I'm at, that you keep doing that, but make it more. So you say now, Vicky and I have had we've had meetings together where we might interact closer, but then say the next event, I might, hey, Vicky, do you want to go have a drink with me? Or do you want to have like a coffee? So then all of a sudden our relationship's going to go from one to the other, and to being more, but we might only do that twice a year. So we're not actually spending that much time together, but we are given ourselves a memory of each other that's individual and to both of us. And so we're growing our relationships to be not just, we met at a conference and you're one of the 500 people that we met. Okay, now we met at 2 conferences and we spent 20 minutes together. Now we met at 3 conferences and we spent an hour together one-on-one. Now insert that with LinkedIn, social, in person, however you interact with people. And it has to be natural. I don't believe it's completely fake. I do believe like I just connect with people because it's like who I am. But I also like make sure like I care about what you're doing. I want to sit and talk to you. And I'm going to let you know that like I'm going to be open and honest with you, and we're going to build this relationship. And I think that as long as you keep doing that, it kind of naturally, it is takes time and it is long and whatever, but it does naturally go around you, that when you, even if you're reaching out to someone, I was at an event with Miles Walker where we were talking to someone on the phone that we had not spoken to 13, I think it was about 13 years we had spoken to this person. And it was just a random conversation that Miles and I had connected with this one person. And that person knew who I was. I bet you, like, if I was like calling him and being like, Des, or can you help me with the job? He still would have remembered me and he still would have been there, or Miles would have done the introduction because Miles knows him better. So people are willing to do that. They're willing to have that conversation. It just, you have to do it. And then, because I feel like I'm answering a question, but I'm kind of going around in a circle.
You are. You are. It's a good question.
You can also find the buffer. The buffer in the middle is if you know someone and it's completely cold, you have not spoken to them in 10, 15 years, they might not answer. So asking is always one. But there's also probably a buffer of someone in the middle who's a part of your relationship who might know them better. So you can also ask for help. There's been times where I've reached out to numerous people in my network and said, I don't know this person that well. Can you make an introduction? And they will do it, or they'll reach out to me and say, hey, Des, I was just talking to this person. Do you know them? Like, no, I don't. I'm going to do a warm introduction because I think you need to talk.
So don't assume anything is kind of what I'm hearing, and getting yourself out of your own head, and knowing that other people that you may be talking to are probably in the same boat and maybe feel a little uncomfortable. Maybe they feel bad because they drop the ball and drop that communication as well. So don't assume anything. Go into it with good intentions. And yeah, it was good feedback. All right, I think we're ready for our last question, right, Matt?
We are. So Des, normally we ask everyone who comes on the show to answer, what is one habit that you should start or stop to improve your business? But I think we'll ask it this way. Everyone who's listening, for anyone who might find themselves in the position of looking for a new job or getting laid off at some point, what's a habit that they should be doing now before that happens so that they're ready when it does?
I think I don't know if it's called. I don't know if it would be a habit. For me, it was. But so for me, by far, the most valuable thing that existed was my network. That is by far. So I don't know if it would be a habit, but building relationships around me has been something I've always been very good at. I've been very focused at. I care about people a lot. And so it comes really naturally to me. But because of that, I've been very lucky that there's been people who are willing to support me when I'm not doing well. And that has been very, very beneficial. Habit, I don't know. I'm not glass half full.
I think you got a good one.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
I think you got a good one. Develop your network now so that you can lean on them later. I think that's perfect.
Yeah, especially if it doesn't come naturally. Yeah. Yeah, if it doesn't come naturally to you, because it doesn't. I married the exact opposite of myself, and my husband he's very introverted. He has very close, tight-knit relationships, but it takes a lot to, get out there and to network and try new things sometimes. So yeah, that's good feedback. Well, thanks for joining us, Des. This has been a long time coming. You've been on our minds. We wanted to have you on the show, and we're so glad that you could join us today for this episode of IT Nation Wise Up. And for those of you listening in, we hope that you enjoyed this episode as well. Remember, this is all about driving your business forward. So make sure to subscribe today so you'll never miss an episode. And until next time, remember that every day is a chance to learn something new.